Thank you, Alistair. Good morning, everybody. Distinguished guests, excellencies, colleagues, and friends. Just to give you a very short idea about Montpellier Malabo Forum, it's been created in 2014 after the Malabo Declaration, which ambitions to build food security for Africa continent with the transformation of the food systems, with the motto, Africa must learn from Africa. So the 17 scientists part of the panel of the Malabo Montpellier do establish reports on a yearly basis, and reports do outline the best practices in a few domains, which are selected every year, across Africa. And our task, we in the Malabo Montpellier Forum, my co-chair is the former Prime Minister of Niger, and before it was Haile Mariam Desalegn from Ethiopia, is to persuade and convince the decision makers and the leaders to upscale, replicate, and adapt the results of these best success stories. So we are defining it to, of course, use innovation in order to fight climate change and transform radically the food systems in Africa, first for Africa food security, knowing that Africa has 60% of the arable land and that 20% of Africans still experience food insecurity.
Thank you. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Well, thank you very much, Impact Economic, for having me to speak on the increasing speed of history and its systemic risk, which are really defining our era. I will outline the great acceleration of history effects on our planet's habitability and propose a few strategies and reforms to reconcile speed and sustainability. The great acceleration of history concept captures the Anthropocene turning point since the mid-20th century. Climatologists Will Stephen and Paul Crutzen have established the central role of humanity, I quote, as a geophysical agent for the history of the Earth. Hartmann-Rosa shows that a spiral of speed, technical, social, and historical acceleration, creating permanent urgency, erodes adaptation. As Nietzsche deplored the monstrous speed, to say his word, we are ashamed to come to rest. Alarming strategic indicators by IPCC you are all aware of, are sometimes staggering. Faster everything. Gas emissions, just one figure, 410 ppm in 2019 alone, which is the highest in 2 million years. Global warming, ice thawing, faster ocean acidification than in 11,000 years. Biodiversity collapse, massive pollution invasions, and their cascading effects. Just the example of the extreme weather events, which are more frequent, more intense, as last summer has shown, the huge floods in Texas, in Pakistan, mega fires in the Great Canyon in Spain. 330,000 hectares have been burnt only in this summer in Spain. And of course, we see that these extreme events have devastating effects. Per a survey by European Central Bank, which has been established in Europe, about 1,160 regions, they established that the loss in GDP for heat waves, it's 1.3%. For floods, it is 2 0.8%, and droughts 3%. Not, of course, to mention the devastating effects on ecosystems, which are enduring and last much longer after the events take place, and very, very special effect on food security once again, while 1/3 of the population cannot access healthy food. Disruptive trade and defense policies, as we have seen in the context of the major shifts in political context, especially of powerful states, environmental regulations denials, rollbacks, fossil fuel pushes via drill rhetoric, all, of course, deepening the systemic crisis. So the trade and defense policies, just to give the example of the 5% increase imposed on allies, are, of course, diverting financial funds, which are becoming rare, from social and environmental fields, derailing further the green transitions. The war on science feared to announce an environmental dark age, as Robert Proctor, the historian of science, predicted, and dismantling of public information institutions weaken progress and disaster anticipation response. Planetary transformation speed outpaces social, institutional, ethical management. This gap sources existential dangers. So how to reconcile speed with sustainability? Acceleration created these crises. So solutions must balance strategies speeding up just transition and, of course, checking destructive ones. This reconciliation requires urgent attention and long-term reforms. The ecological urgency is, of course, a top priority. To accelerate the energy transition, we need a drastic fossil fuel reduction. We need as well to scale up green technologies in all fields, solar, wind, hydro, green hydrogen, and improve as well energy efficiency and as well resources efficiency across the sectors. Mobilize for a global plastic agreement after August negotiations failure is urgent, as 460 million tons production yearly is expected to triple by 2060. Moreover, we do know that microplastics massively invade chain foods, and we find them in our brains as well. So manage technological emergency, where innovation is, of course, compulsory, is as well necessary. But unregulated advances exacerbate inequities, undermine governance, and create land, water, energy conflicts use among sectors. AI data centers investments imply huge energy demand. By projection, 1,250 minimum terawatt hour in early 2030. What does that mean? It means that it will have to come from fossil origin, because renewables will not be able to face this huge increase. So regulations like California's Senate Bill 52 lately, reporting the dangerous AI behaviors, is a good start. However, we have to go much further and put ceilings for the production to make sure that they will be respecting the ecological goals. Address geopolitical and social emergencies is, of course, a must. Peace stability is a prerequisite for climate action. Reinvigorate diplomacy, conflict prevention, address grievances which are growing across the world, which are fueled by inequalities and by growing social discontent across the planet. And we need, beyond the urgencies, of course, to pursue transformation in 4 key areas at least. First, restore science authority and credibility through various means to give back the independence to the scientists to make sure they innovate and they pursue their mission, attract displaced researchers, invest public communication, promote research expansion, ocean science, carbon removal sites, etc., for instance. Combat misinformation. This is absolutely basic to rebuild the narrative and counteroffensive. Engage influencers, for instance, to defend the climate, as we are doing for the rest of to attract the youth attention. Defend fact-checking, transparent data. Civic space must favor long-term thinking over sensationalism. Paradigm shift is absolutely necessary in economics and lifestyles, because after all, we depend on the whole chain from research upstream to the product itself of what we are consuming. But hyper-consumerism is not compatible with the Earth limits. So we have to transform our food systems as well to sustainability and reframe water investment for governance, allocation, and infrastructure. Last but not least, institutional reform, systemic policies. Political time is trapped between the media immediacy and the long and slowness of the legislative and political cycles. So there is a huge gap that we have to address, because by the time decisions are implemented, it's always too late, too little. So temporal governance, for instance, anticipates impacts, integrating foresight. Consolidate integrated law environment is absolutely necessary in order to avoid loopholes. International agreements, recent progress via mobilization, state and non-state actors are encouraging. The WHO's agreement, the call needs for oceans, and above all, the enter into force of the high sea treaties next January are encouraging, and perhaps we can build on that. And so is the International Court's advisory opinion defining clean, healthy, sustainable environment as a human right to be respected, opens climate justice reparations. Even if it is long, it is extremely promising, and these are tools to be used. COP30 Berlin, which is to take place in the emblematic Amazon, offers crucial opportunity to secure binding commitments, finance redirecting to resilience, equitable transitions beyond statements. So, in conclusion, we can say that ethics, hope, and action towards a social, ecological multilateralism can open ways for solutions. Hans Jonas urged actions compatible with authentic human life permanence on Earth. Politics, economy must develop by this induction. Crisis catalyzes creativity, but creativity requires leadership to be implemented. So new collective leadership can come from smaller regional states and leaders in partnership, of course, with bigger ones, but before all, among all the willings to make coalition of the willings between states, cities, business, citizens, civil society, not for war as before, but to sustain life. And smaller leaders sometimes do not have this propension of authoritarian, and they are not threatening, they are reassuring, and they are committed to federating. So I do think that it's moments for pedagogies and policies, reform education for innovation and environmental literacy, teach complexity, uncertainty, and collapsology are becoming absolutely necessary in university curricula, and above all, train leaders to crisis management and to manage hyper-complexity. So minds, institutions can evolve with technology. Universal survival demands universal moral imagination. Embrace African Ubuntu, from the beautiful Bantu word meaning making humanity together. Each in his and her influence sphere can become an eco-citizen in peace with cultural diversity and biodiversity, bending together towards a habitable future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.